Howdy folks, I'm Meet the Name, and today I'd like to briefly review the new Five Nights at Freddy's film. For folks who don't know what Five Nights at Freddy's is, it's a 2023 film that is based on the video game of the same name. The video game franchise itself started back in 2014 and was created by a man named Scott Cawthon. Over the past 8 years, the film has been in development, and finally, after all this time, it's finally released. The film was produced by both Scott Cawthon and Jason Blum of Blumhouse fame, because you can't have a single freaking horror film come out that doesn't have his name attached onto it somewhere. I'm not the biggest fan of Blumhouse normally, but I can't deny that they know how to make a profitable film on a shoestring budget, and for this film, that budget was $20 million. That's a lot of Funko Pops, but not a lot of cash compared to most films. The movie itself was directed by Emma Tammy, who has made a couple of films I have never heard of before, so I can't really vouch for her quality, but from what I've managed to scrounge up on IMDb, she seems to mostly make documentaries and horror films, which is an interesting combination. Quick sidetrack, if you want a good horror mockumentary film, look up Lake Mungo. The film was distributed through Universal Pictures, who released it in theaters on October 27th, 2023. And if you're one of the 5 people that own Peacock like me, it's also streaming on there at the same time. So, what's the film all about? Well, Five Nights at Freddy's is a supernatural horror thriller about a man named Mike, played by Josh Hutcherson, who has to work as a security guard in an abandoned pizzeria. Think Chuck E. Cheese's, but much more sanitary. While working at this restaurant, Mike has strange dreams about his brother that went missing when he was a kid, and strange children start to show up in the dream as well. Mike is deeply disturbed and tries hard to hold on to his sanity while simultaneously fighting for custody of his troubled younger sister Abby, played by Piper Rubio, from his greedy Aunt Jane, played by Mary Stuart Masterson. Along the way, Mike meets a police officer named Vanessa, played by Elizabeth Lail, who has a strange attachment to the restaurant and starts hanging out with him more. Oh yeah, there are also killer robots and Matthew Lillard shows up. So yeah, for a film that's 109 minutes long, there is a surprising amount going on. I saw that there were a lot of complaints online that there was too much story in the film, and I both agree and disagree with that sentiment. On one hand, too many threads all at once can get a bit overwhelming for the audience, especially since we aren't given a lot of time to explore everything thoroughly. But on the other hand, you kinda need these threads in order to justify why some characters do what they do. Why does Mike keep falling asleep at his job? Well, he isn't lazy, he's just got a bunch of childhood drama he's trying to work out. Why does Jane want to adopt Abby? Well, it's so that she can get monthly checks from the government for childcare. Although, if the people who made this film were well aware of how America takes care of its citizens, they'd realize that Jane's motivation makes no sense. Why are the robots alive? Because a bunch of kids got murdered and are haunting them. Why did the kids get murdered? I don't know, still figuring that out. Looking back, I wonder if it would have been easier to just simplify everyone's backstories, as opposed to making things a bit too convoluted. Although I will say that at the end things do wrap up alright. It's still a bit messy, but once everything assembles, you can generally make sense of just about everything. Although with some of the content in the story, it makes you wonder who the target audience is. There's a lot of family drama in the film, which your youngsters may not be as invested in, while simultaneously there are a few goofy hijinks as well that distract you from all the murder. The tone of the film varies wildly, and it can be a bit difficult to nail down who exactly would get the most out of this film. In general, from what I could piece together, I would say that while the plot of the film has been made to try and accommodate a general audience, the actual world and characters that we are given will probably appeal to those who have been invested in the franchise for a long time. It's one of those rare video game films that I think was actually made with those die-hard fans in mind. There's probably references, Easter eggs, and characters that I didn't even recognize that a veteran of the Fazbear Wars probably would. So it's another one of those aspects that people will find divisive. Although I'm not an expert on the franchise, I can appreciate when filmmakers do try to give the people what they want. And for every aspect that seems awkward, there's another that's nailed down with a satisfying amount of attention to detail. Moving on, I think the human cast itself was decent. I think Josh Hutcherson did a great job at playing Mike. He's deeply troubled and has difficulty functioning in the real world. He's prone to rash decisions and has deep regrets afterwards. He plays a great imperfect character. Mike tries his best to care for his sister, but he's so obsessed with the past that sometimes he neglects her own well-being in exchange for figuring out what happened to his brother. Although I will say that I feel like Mike would have worked better as a single father instead of a brother raising his younger sister. But then again, there are arrangements like this in the real world where a sibling takes on a parental role. It just feels like the kind of dynamic that could have used more time in the oven to really expand upon. Now, Piper Rubio did a good job playing Abby as well. I feel like folks are often too harsh on child actors, so I'm hoping the internet will be kind to her performance and not try to ruin her life like so many other child actors before her. One character that I haven't mentioned enough was Steve Raglan, who was played by Matthew Lillard. People seem to forget that the dude has acting chops beyond just playing Shaggy. Where was I? Oh yeah, Steve Raglan doesn't show up much in the film, but for what little time he has, you will be captivated by his performance. Lillard is a horror veteran and knows how to bring a sort of manic feeling to the role that just bubbles under the surface. I really wished that they used him more. Speaking of what should have been used more, let's talk about the main reason you should see this film. That's right, the robots. Sorry, I meant animatronics. Don't want to upset anyone. For this film, they were created by the wonderfully talented folks at Jim Henson's Creature Shop, and are probably what took up the majority of the film's budget. What I really love is just how accurate they are to what is seen in the first game. For lifeless machines, actually, is a machine lifeless if a ghost is living in it? They sure do have a lot of movement and emotion. It's fantastic to see how deliberately they were made to be janky and broken. They have jerky movements and are covered in layers of grime. Mechanical components are easily visible, and yet they also reach that uncanny valley as well, probably because most of them are actually costumes with talented suit actors wearing them. Again, I can't begin to go over just how much I enjoy seeing practical effects and puppetry used in a film. Sure, there are some awkward-looking CGI effects used because obviously there are some things that can't be solely achieved through puppetry, but what is there is simply marvelous. If there ever is a sequel, they need to bring back the Creature Shop and they need to be given an even bigger budget. I just really wish the animatronics were in the film more, as we don't really get a good look at one until around 25 minutes in, and at around 37 minutes is when they actually start to do things. So for a good third of the film, you'll be left waiting for what you really paid for. But other than that, a marvelous job all around. Also, does this mean the animatronics are officially Muppets? I'm not sure how this works. Besides the animatronics looking good, I think the set design was great as well. The pizzeria in the film looks like it came right out of the games when compared with screenshots. They even had that weird uncanny looking poster from the games. Even I recognized that. Although at times the recreations are almost too good, because some of the props seem slightly larger and more cartoony than usually what they would look like. Also, for some game fans, unfortunately there doesn't seem to be a magnetic door from the games in the film. I'm sorry about that, I know some folks will be devastated. But still, great looking sets. I hope the folks who worked on them know that they did a really great job. Now it's time to move on. I think the biggest question here is, would you consider this a horror film? And my answer would be yes, although it does seem to veer more towards a psychological thriller at times. Now, for a franchise that's built on the almighty jump scare, there are surprisingly few to be seen. What there are, however, are flashing lights that the audiences should be mindful of. While obviously not all flashing lights can cause seizures, it can still be very uncomfortable for the viewer to experience. Just throwing that out there for folks who may be unsure of watching it. What there was a decent amount of was murder. There are some genuinely shocking deaths in the film that I am honestly surprised made it in. At first, when folks were talking about the film and whether or not it needed an R rating, I was a bit confused. Like, sure it's a horror film, but it has big goofy robots in it. How bad could they kill someone? The answer is pretty bad. It was shocking because I didn't expect there to even be much blood at all in the film, but there was a mild amount. While it wasn't Evil Dead levels, it's still enough to help your imagination fill in the blanks. But back to the R rating discussion, I honestly think this is one of those rare PG-13 horror films that I'm fine with staying at PG-13. I feel like anything more and the careful line they've tried to walk between campy and serious could get blurred more than it already is. Not everything needs a Snyder cut, folks. However, keep in mind that most of the horror stuff really happens in the middle around 40 minutes, and in the last 20 minutes, I would say. The in-between is mostly filled with exposition, character drama, and the exploration of mysteries. Oh, and if you want an R-rated film about robots murdering a bunch of folks, why not check out Chopping Mall? Finally, let's quickly bring up the score for the film. It was created by John Andrew Grush and Taylor Newton Stewart, who are a duo known as the Newton Brothers. They made some pretty fun synthy music for this film that gives it a sort of retro feel that complements the pizzeria itself. Looking online, they seem to make a lot of soundtracks for horror films, so I guess the folks at Blumhouse chose a decent duo to get the job done. So basically overall, I think the film was fine. Will it win any awards for writing, directing, or cinematography? Probably not. But could it win awards for costumes, makeup, and effects? Well, in a just world it would, but there's gonna be a lot of competition this year. It's actually been a pretty decent time for filmmaking. Five Nights at Freddy's is a film that can at times feel a bit too big for its relatively short runtime. And while it tries to appeal towards a general audience, those who are more invested in the franchise will definitely feel rewarded by its various callouts and Easter eggs. It's a horror film that takes a bit to get the ball rolling, and when it does, it rolls a pretty good distance before it needs to be pushed again. The animatronics are the star of the show here, and by God did Blumhouse spare no expense with them. Well, I mean, they had a $20 million budget, so they really couldn't afford to cheap out on the bots. After all, they are the main reason you should see it. There's some gory sights that won't make you hurl, but you will say, dang, I can't believe they got away with that. It's a film that punches above its own weight, and while every hit may not land, it'll still send enough punches your way that you'll feel sore in the morning. And can I just say that it's nice to be getting video game films that are actually doing decent now? While I'm at it, hey Microsoft, let me play a random civilian who dies in the Gears of War film. Now we wait to see if they bite.
Was that the bite of 87?
Thank you all so much for watching this video. I know I just released a Spawn vid the other day, but then this film happened and I figured, well, I just watched it, might as well do something. For folks who have seen it, what did you think? Did you like it, or did it need another 8 years of development? Also, please be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and get yourself a slice of pizza, because looking back, I don't think I saw a single one in the whole film. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Get on the ground now!
Targets are considered hostile. Repeat, targets are considered hostile.
Copy that, Red Leader.
What do we do, boss?
We do what we were made to do. Show these folks a fun time.
Funny, I was thinking the exact same thing.
Well then, I guess it's showtime!
Gun!